Imagine waking up one morning to a sudden, deafening silence. No internet, no power, no news, only the faint sound of distant sirens. Then your phone buzzes. World War III declared. Within hours, alliances shatter, missiles launch, and entire cities are turned to ash. Borders dissolve overnight. Satellites fall from orbit. The modern world we built over centuries begins to crumble in just days. But this isn't a movie. This is what could actually happen if World War III breaks out, and the results would change humanity forever. The spark that ignites the fire. It begins not with a grand declaration, but a single mistake. A drone strike gone wrong. A cyber attack traced to the wrong nation, or a disputed territory where a shot is fired. In an interconnected world already drowning in mistrust, one incident spreads like wildfire. Within hours, media headlines scream of retaliation, and leaders promise revenge. Diplomacy collapses under the weight of pride and paranoia. Global powers move faster than ever before. NATO activates its rapid response forces, while China mobilizes its army across contested regions. Russia orders full military readiness, and North Korea broadcasts threats of fire and fury. Economic sanctions slam into place overnight, but they only accelerate the march toward chaos. What was once a border skirmish becomes the start of something catastrophic. Ordinary citizens wake up to fear they've never known. Supermarkets flood with panicked buyers. Stock markets collapse within minutes. The world isn't yet at war, but in everyone's mind, it already is. Billions of people sense it. The line between peace and apocalypse has just been crossed. Alliances divide the planet. The world fractures into two primary blocks. On one side, the United States, NATO allies, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. On the other, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Dozens of smaller nations are forced to choose sides under immense political pressure. Neutrality is no longer an option. Trade routes collapse overnight. Fuel prices skyrocket as tankers are seized in international waters. Nations hoard their resources while their economies spiral. The globalized world humanity once relied on becomes obsolete, replaced by rigid military coalitions fighting for survival. For the first time since World War II, the fear of nuclear confrontation dominates every political discussion. The balance of power has shifted, but the motives are the same. Control of resources, technological supremacy, and global dominance. The stage is set for a conflict, the likes of which humanity has never faced before. The first wave of attacks. It begins with silence. Satellites blink out one by one. Communications are severed. Moments later, hypersonic missiles scream across skies at 5 times the speed of sound. Major cities like Seoul, Warsaw, and Manila are the first to fall under coordinated strikes. Within minutes, cyber attacks paralyze power grids and financial systems. Banks go offline, airports shut down, GPS navigation ceases. Entire nations are thrown into technological darkness, forced back into a pre-digital era overnight. But this is only the beginning. Drone swarms blacken the skies, while autonomous tanks roll into contested territories. AI-driven warfare replaces traditional battle lines. Humanity realizes too late that its greatest technological achievements have now become its deadliest weapons. The cyber apocalypse, the war, moves beyond the battlefield and into every device connected to the internet. Nation-state hackers unleash devastating digital assaults, wiping out data from hospitals, stock exchanges, and defense systems. Entire banking networks collapse, leaving millions penniless overnight. Deepfake videos flood social media, showing fabricated military orders and falsified surrender announcements. Citizens no longer know which sources to trust. Misinformation spreads faster than missiles, and paranoia consumes entire populations. The modern world, built on digital infrastructure, crumbles in weeks. Humanity suddenly confronts the horrifying reality. In World War III, the internet itself has become a weapon, and no one is safe. Nuclear shadows. As tensions escalate, nuclear powers move their arsenals into position. Submarines armed with ballistic missiles vanish beneath the oceans, waiting silently for commands. Land-based silos are armed, and launch readiness protocols go into effect globally. Every political move becomes a gamble. One wrong interpretation of radar data could trigger mutually assured destruction. Diplomats plead for de-escalation, but the military-industrial machine grinds forward, fueled by fear and vengeance. Billions of people live in silent terror. Shelters are stocked. Schools are converted into bunkers. Humanity stands on the edge of extinction, one command away from ending civilization forever. The fall of urban warfare devastates some of the world's most iconic cities. New York, Tokyo, London, Moscow, all become battlegrounds where skyscrapers collapse and subways turn into makeshift shelters. Streets flood with smoke, rubble, and chaos. Civilians face impossible choices: stay and risk annihilation, or flee into the unknown. Millions become refugees overnight, crossing borders into countries equally overwhelmed by the crisis. Food, water, and medicine vanish from shelves as looting spreads uncontrollably. Cities built over centuries fall within weeks. Humanity's progress is reduced to dust, and modern society begins to resemble a post-apocalyptic nightmare. Chapter 7: The Great Energy Wars. Oil, gas, and rare earth minerals become the true currency of survival. Nations deploy armies to secure energy hubs in the Middle East, Africa, and South America. Pipelines are sabotaged, tankers are hijacked, and entire economies grind to a halt. Black markets thrive, while legitimate trade ceases entirely. Cars, energy scarcity drives riots in countries that once thrived on imported fuel, creating internal chaos alongside the global conflict. Control of energy becomes the deciding factor in victory. Without it, even the most technologically advanced militaries cannot fight. Power itself becomes a weapon. Space becomes a war zone. Low Earth orbit turns into a graveyard. Satellites are destroyed by anti-satellite missiles, creating massive debris fields that threaten all space operations. GPS, communication, and surveillance systems fail simultaneously. Nations race to deploy orbital weapons capable of striking anywhere on Earth in minutes. For the first time in human history, space isn't a frontier, it's a battlefield. Whoever controls orbit controls the war. But this new theater of combat comes at a price. As debris spirals around the planet, civilian space exploration collapses entirely. The dream of interplanetary travel dies before it begins. Economic Armageddon. Global markets vanish in an instant. Currencies lose value overnight. Cryptocurrencies surge briefly, then collapse as power grids fail. billion-dollar corporations evaporate, leaving billions unemployed and desperate. Supply chains break beyond repair. Countries that depended on imports face starvation within weeks. Financial institutions crumble, and barter systems replace banks as the primary means of trade. The dream of globalization ends, replaced by fractured economies surviving in isolation. Humanity realizes too late that modern prosperity was built on fragile interdependence, and it has now shattered. The refugee flood, borders collapse under the weight of humanity in motion. Tens of millions flee from active war zones, searching desperately for safety. Camps overflow as diseases spread unchecked. Nations once known for humanitarian aid shut their doors. Resources are stretched beyond capacity, and even stable governments struggle to keep their citizens alive. Chaos breeds distrust, and violent clashes erupt along borderlines. For the first time in history, the refugee crisis becomes truly global. No nation, no matter how powerful, escapes its effects. Food and water wars, farmlands lie in ruins, poisoned by fallout or seized by occupying forces. Climate disruptions caused by the war accelerate famine, leaving billions without access to food. Desperation drives nations to weaponize food and water supplies. Rivers are dammed, reservoirs drained, and agricultural trade weaponized against rivals. Starvation claims more lives than bullets. Entire populations revolt against their governments, demanding survival over politics. Hunger becomes the ultimate weapon of war, forcing even the strongest nations to their knees. The silent pandemic in the chaos. Biological weapons are unleashed, intentionally or accidentally. Mutated pathogens spread rapidly across continents, striking soldiers and civilians alike. Healthcare systems collapse under the pressure. Hospitals overflow while medicine becomes scarce. Entire regions are quarantined, but the virus knows no borders. As fear of contagion rivals fear of bombs, humanity fights a second invisible war, one against a silent, deadly enemy created by its own hands. The climate domino effect, explosions, burning cities, and poisoned oceans accelerate climate change at an unprecedented rate. Glaciers melt faster. Sea levels rise, drowning coastal cities already devastated by conflict. Acid rain destroys crops. Toxic clouds linger for months, and biodiversity collapses. Environmental damage that would have taken centuries happens in just a few years. In the fight for power, humanity has triggered a planetary crisis from which it may never recover. Nature itself becomes another battlefield. One humanity cannot win. The New World Order, after years of chaos, old superpowers crumble. Unexpectedly, smaller nations with untapped resources rise to prominence, reshaping the balance of global power. Former enemies forge uneasy alliances as the cost of prolonged war becomes unbearable. Corporations, militias, and private security forces fill the vacuum left by failed governments. Humanity faces an uncertain future, fractured, weary, but determined to survive. A new world is born, but it is unrecognizable from the one we once knew. The final question in the silence after the storm, humanity gathers in ruins to rebuild. But the scars of World War III are etched into every surviving city, every broken family, and every poisoned river. Billions are gone. Nations are unrecognizable. Technology and nature alike have turned against us. Yet, in the rubble, hope flickers, a reminder that survival itself is victory. The question remains, will humanity learn from this nightmare, or are we doomed to repeat it? The answer will decide whether there's ever a World War IV. World War III would not just change nations, it would change everything. From technology to climate, from economies to humanity itself, the world as we know it would vanish. Yet, there's still time to prevent it. Diplomacy, empathy, and cooperation are the only weapons that can keep us from the edge of extinction. But before we reach that point, we must ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want to fight for?